Greetings and welcome to Conversations with AARP in the Virgin Islands. And this morning we have another informative program for you. We're happy to welcome today Mr. Daryl Jaschen, the Director of VITEMA. So good morning, Daryl. How are you today?
Yeah. Good morning, Troy. Thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with you and your show for AARP.
Great. Thank you for being with us. Tell us a little bit about your role within VITEMA. And actually, before that, even tell us a little bit of what you did before. I know you've had a very interesting career even before coming to VITEMA. So tell us a little about what you did before and now what you do within VITEMA.
Oh, sure. And thank you for the opportunity. I've really enjoyed living in the U.S. Virgin Islands since 2005. Coming down here from the States, I ran right into the Virgin Islands National Guard, known as VING. There I spent some time for about 10 years focusing on the obviously wartime efforts for our soldiers and airmen, going overseas, supporting the federal mission, as well as supporting a domestic operation mission, which means hurricane preparedness primarily. So my indoctrination to the Virgin Islands National Guard and the territory is very much focused on hurricane preparation, working with the territory. It's a wonderful agency called VITEMA, which I'm now responsible for, thanks to Governor Bryan. I've been here for about a year and a half. So definitely a lot of time in the Virgin Islands, not much time outside the Virgin Islands in the last 15 years. I really love it here and want to spend all the time I can down here preparing the territory for what we do best, coordinating for emergencies, all hazards, safety of life, preservation of property, 911, key responsibility for me in the territory.
Wow, excellent, excellent. Thank you for all that you've done for us in the United States and for us in the Virgin Islands. We're blessed to have you here working within VITEMA and helping us to be prepared for hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, all sorts of natural disasters.
Yes.
And so now I have heard about all the different types of drills and exercises that VITEMA goes through on a regular basis to make sure that VITEMA itself is prepared for a natural disaster, especially a hurricane, which is our greatest threat here, and to make sure that all of the Virgin Islanders are prepared. Can you tell us a little bit about some of these regular exercises, drills, all that you do behind the scenes to make sure that we're prepared?
Yeah, typically we use the vernacular, all disasters are local, which means they start small. It could be a small traffic accident involved VI, fire, police, EMS. And as you start working the complexity of those events up, you involve more and more agencies. So VITEMA as a coordinating agencies brings the complexity to bear to make sure we focus on what's called unity of effort using what's called the Incident Command System known as ICS. So exercises are scalable. So with ICS, no matter whether you're coming from the state of Washington, Washington, D.C., or Virgin Islands, we know how those programs work. Back in 2017, right before Irma Maria, we ran a very large exercise called Vigilant Guard. It involved federal partners, the states came in, National Guard states came in, all our agencies worked together for a good 2 weeks on running a scenario of one hurricane impacting one island. And of course, what happens in Irma Maria, we get 2 Cat 5 hurricanes 10 days apart. We recreate the whole playbook. So what we've been doing since 2017 is having those exercises involving different leaders, leadership responsibilities, because every year, new individuals are in charge. So Governor Bryan last year was his first time as the governor under a hurricane perspective. So we run very simple exercises. And right now with COVID-19, we use the term tabletop exercises. So what we're doing today virtually, we can get together with 30 or 40 individuals, run through a scenario and have some good lessons learned. The important thing, we identify gaps and responsibilities to fix those gaps. We just finished running Department of Human Services on sheltering. Back in March, we did COVID-19 for Department of Health. And we're getting ready probably to work with the Department of Education on school openings. So those are good opportunities for leadership to come together. And even tomorrow with FEMA, we're doing an exercise called Ready Raccoon, both for Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, focused on sheltering with COVID-19, disaster center response, like we meet with FEMA afterwards under COVID-19, plus individual assistance under COVID-19. So all things that are very new to us, but it's very important we get together either face-to-face or virtually to talk together. And of course, share business cards, understand each other, understand the Virgin Islands, we drive on the left-hand side of the road, which a lot of people don't realize that if they're coming from off island. But this is a chance to get together and exercise our plans and update our plans based upon new people or new conditions, especially with COVID-19 right now.
Excellent, excellent. Sounds like you all have a really great plan. I know that over the years, VITEMA has always done a good job bringing us through natural disasters, especially in the aftermath. I mean, I recall after Hurricane Maria, there was such great confusion that we were hearing about in the news all through Puerto Rico that the meals ready to eat and all the supplies couldn't get to the people in certain parts of the island. It just seemed rather chaotic, at least based on the news reports. But here in the Virgin Islands, it seemed like everything moved well, and there was a nice interface between VITEMA and FEMA. So that's a real testimony to the work that you all do in VITEMA each year, making sure that we're prepared. And so again, thank you for that. Now, here we are in the midst of this pandemic, and you mentioned a little bit about that. What would happen if there is a natural disaster and we would have to use shelters? What measures have been put in place to protect people while in a shelter after a natural disaster?
For season 2020, hopefully not further on, but we're prepared for this. I call this the thinking person's hurricane season because, the unknowns with COVID-19, we've learned a lot, for territory since March, if you will. The Department of Health and VITEMA have been working on this since back in January. So these whole terminologies of what personal protective equipment is, what social distancing is, infrared, non-contact thermometers, those terminologies become second nature to us now. Those all are very important going into the sheltering program. The American Red Cross, we have a great partnership with. They have really looked out and how we set up what's called congregate sheltering, but that's really what we call a shelter of last resort. And emphasize that. So, Commissioner Kazi Gomez, Department of Human Services, she's the lead agency as far as for sheltering, for mass care, and what's called congregate and non-congregate. Department of Human Services, along with Department of Health, with Commissioner Encarnacion, talks about special needs sheltering, two different types of sheltering, but ultimately, if you cannot shelter at home or with someone else close to you that you trust, then we start looking at options. So for this year, we really want you to consciously think about how you can protect yourself at home or with somebody else, with families, friends, your faith-based group, before you come to shelters. The reason I emphasize that, because with COVID-19, we have to put special measures in place. And one of those measures coming in place, and we have spent the last 2 weeks with FEMA and our other agencies internally talking about the conditions. We now need to screen you. Similar to going to the hospital right now, we need to screen you to make sure you don't have the potential to bring COVID-19 in, or if you do have the symptoms, or we do a non-contact temperatures test for you, and your temperature is 100.4 or higher, then we will not allow you in with a congregate sheltering perspective. We will ask you to go off to an isolation area and then treat you according for that. So the worst thing we want to do have to happen is a shelter population to become COVID-19 positives. And so the measures we put in place and the way we're working it right now, if you leave that shelter for more than 4 hours, you come back in, you have to get retested again. And that's just tested from the non-contact temperature testing. Okay, so those are some conditions, but really, and we're having to reduce because of social distancing, we're losing 2/3 of our space for a shelter. So if I could put 100 individuals in a shelter last year, this year I can only put 30 or 33 people in that shelter.
Right. Right. So we all need to think about this and do our own kind of planning in case we need a shelter. Over the last several years, decades, we have all just said, well, shelters are there. If we need them, we just go. But this year, it sounds like we have to do a lot more planning ahead of time because we don't know how this pandemic will affect us as we lead up to a natural disaster. So, we encourage the listening audience to take that to heart. And if you think that you may need a shelter, always have your plan B, your plan C, in case you cannot go to one of the shelters, and try not to, it sounds like, because
Yeah,
as you said, the shelter has
yeah,
been.
and Troy, if I can, let me just read off, the shelters that we've identified already. So if you do
Sure.
want to come to shelter, I'll tell you where to go, and I'll also tell you the limitations, how many people we can put in a shelter.
Yes.
And I'll go through all 4 islands. We have a second. So St. John, we always go to Sprouse School. We've not set up Calabash yet over in Coral Bay, but right now it's Sprouse School, and that's only 56 individuals can we put in that shelter for this year. And again, you're not in one classroom. There's several classrooms. If you know Cruz Bay, you know Sprouse School over there. It's several different classrooms. We have generators hooked up. But it's only 56 individuals going to be able to be there. So that's one. On St. Thomas right now, Lockhart Elementary School, 83 right now as we're talking about being able to put in there. Not a whole lot. Newt Hansen, about 32. Sugar State, 86. And if we're able to get BCB set up, Brichote, we can probably put about 140 in there. So some real challenges and reduced numbers going in there. And then on St. Croix, DC Canagata, we're looking only about 54 individuals. Complex, about 246. If you go to Clarida Marco, which we're not there yet, not Clarida Marco. Yeah, it'd be 57, sorry. Mars Hill, if we do Mars Hill, it'll be only 75. And then if we go to Water Island, the firehouse, only about 18 individuals. So this is a much smaller size based upon response. Talking to Governor Bryan a couple hours ago, or about an hour ago, he wants us as the emergency management agency, working with the Department of Health, Human Services, to get this information out. So, you're the first ones hearing it based upon the governor's need to get the information out. So, the key takeaway is very limited. Much more so in the past, but you'll hear more about this from VITEMA Director Jaschen, Commissioner Kazi Gomez, Department of Human Services, Commissioner Carcion. We've been on radio stations. We'll be getting the word out more and more to make sure we understand the limitations for shelters this year and emphasize the need to try to shelter at other homes because of COVID-19 or with faith-based groups. We're really reaching out to them today.
Oh, well, that's significant. Yeah, thank you. And thanks for sharing that with us, because we do need to be extra prepared this year. We don't want anybody to get left out in the open. So listening audience, please think about this and look for a safe place in your home where you can shelter, or with a relative or a friend, because there may not be room for you in the inn, as we're hearing officially today from our director of VITEMA. Now, as we have heard, we have these unique situations because of the pandemic. But are there any other interesting challenges that you can foresee for this hurricane season? Is it going to be a very active one, an average one? What's the outlook?
Well, you have a couple different groups that put their forecasts out. Colorado State University already put 2 forecasts out. NOAA put their initial forecast out. Everybody's saying it's a more active hurricane season. We already see we're up through Faye as far as for tropical storms per se. There's a 58% chance that, according to Colorado State University, a major Category 3 or higher could hit the Caribbean. Now, Caribbean's not the territory. It's all the way down, down to the, Trinidad, Tobago area, all the way up through Hispaniola. That's a wide berth, and that's no big surprise that we could have something, at least one, come through Category 3 or higher this year. We've been very blessed so far with the Sahara dust. It's always a nuisance for us and respiratory challenges, but Sahara dust brings dry weather, which is not conducive for hurricanes. So if I watch that layer of dust and where it comes right now off Africa, if that starts moving north, of the Caribbean, then we'll start seeing those storms that are a little bit farther south. They'll start hitting warmer water, and we'll see more activities coming up. So we anticipate probably at least 1 or 2 events coming up. Already we're just about halfway through July. But when August, September hits, anticipate, being prepared. And I hate to say this, but, we've been through a lot in 2017. We had a couple of near misses, last year. We saw what happened to Bahamas and Dorian. To see that happen and realize for 24 hours at Category 5, that could happen to us very, very easily. And I hate to say that, but that brings a lot of stress to us. If you've gone through this, you don't want to think about it, but we have to take some preventive measures and start not wishing it away, but take our time now and do the planning for that. We don't want it to come, but I want us to be prepared, whether you're VITEMA, or whether you're an individual, or whether you're part of a faith-based group. We have some great volunteers ready to go right now. Our commodities, our challenges to get the commodities into the territory. Get what you need now, because going to stores 3 days before a hurricane with PPE on, with a mask, and the challenges for communicating is going to be even more stress. So it's just maybe one or two threats, but I want us to be prepared as best we can to keep our level of anxiety down. So the more preparation we have now, the better we will be, and we'll be going through this together. But we want to keep ourselves calm, and that's what VITEMA does, the governor does, to make sure that we have it under control. National Guard's available to support us. I have federal responders already in the house ready to go, Army Corps of Engineers. I have generators in territory now. We have FEMA commodities. We have water. We have meals ready to go for us if we need them. But you need to prepare for yourself, for your homes and your families.
Right. And as the director of AARP in the Virgin Islands, whenever I speak for sure with our members and our volunteers and so forth, I'm always telling people, be prepared year round, not just during hurricane season, right? Because we have the threat of earthquakes and
Yes.
tsunamis at any
Yes.
time, and
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, we need to be prepared. And if we were prepared, we would have been so much better prepared for the pandemic. I remember when the pandemic was really taking off, everybody was scrambling to buy paper towel and toilet paper and non-perishable food items, thinking that maybe our food supply would be interrupted. But we need to be prepared all the time. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's preparedness, and there's the word called hoarding. I think what you were alluding to, and I watched it also, not just here, back in the States. Everybody were hoarding what they thought was going to be the needed supplies or the supply distribution challenges, because we did not know what COVID-19 was going to bring. So if we just stay calm and get ourselves through the period of time, we're talking August and September primarily for storms. We still have a threat for November, and that's when November 30th, when hurricane season ends. But really manage within your abilities and capabilities. That's the key thing to do. Your family, your consumption. We know we're going to need a little bit of cash, because we're not going to have ATM machines. So you don't need to have a whole lot of cash, but realize you're going to have to buy certain things. You're going to have cash. We're going to need to have some water. You're going to need to have some fuel for generators. You need to have some basic, medicine. If you need medicine, that's a key thing for you. You can get your 30-day supply, 60-day supply, but don't go to the extreme and try to buy everything for yourself as if you're going to be a prepper for the disaster of doom. It's hurricane season, okay? COVID-19 has brought a little bit of challenges to us. The beauty behind this, we become very well now knowledgeable about COVID-19. We know social distancing. We know the best preventive measure is a mask. The right proper mask to wear. You can make your own face coverings. That's the key thing. And then, we've already shut down the bars. So we're preventing ourselves from getting worse. So, but the calmness we can have by working within your own means is very, very important to have. Back in January, we had the, earthquakes in Ponce, Puerto Rico, potential for tsunamis to come here in the territory. We talked about those. Then we had COVID-19, and now we're wrapping up COVID-19 again. It's surging. Now we have hurricane season. The resiliency of Virgin Islanders are wonderful. We're a very close group, which is wonderful also. So we talk to each other. We communicate to each other. We will support each other. Help will be with us. I always talk about how long you should be prepared to be on your own, quote unquote. I would say 10 days. So 10 days to be on your own before I can get up the points of distribution, before I can get all the FEMA response groups in here, before I can get the routes cleared. That's a long period of time, is 10 days.
Yep.
If you think about it now and you take action now, if it comes back before that, great. If it takes 10 days because the conditions are such, then we're ready to go. So that's what I'm asking everybody to do. Be prepared. Think this through with COVID-19. Think through communications. As far as radio stations are very important to go to. Make sure you have a radio to listen to. So you can get updates from the governor, from VITEMA. We'll talk about where to go to get water and fuel and supplies to make sure you are taken care of. But it's going to take us some time to get it all supported.
Right. And now we have seen that FEMA has opened offices here in the Virgin Islands since Hurricane Maria. will that increase their rate of response by having so many FEMA personnel here? How will that help us if we were to be struck by another major hurricane?
The beauty of this is, I'll mention a personality. We all know Bill Vogel. Bill Vogel's been around. He's our deputy federal coordinating officer down here. He was here for Irma Maria. He's here part of recovery. He's working with me daily right now on COVID-19. He understands the Virgin Islands more than anybody else outside of Virgin Islanders. He's been doing this since probably 20 years now. So the presence of FEMA down here before we had COVID-19 was focusing on recovery operations, recovery, to make sure that the federal dollar is spent properly on the recovery perspective with Office of Disaster Recovery. The team called the IMAT team, which is the incident management team that helps us for hurricanes, is already engaged with myself and VITEMA and our other agencies. In some cases, they'll be more virtual than physical. I already have a group on St. Croix already working with me virtually, but are physically in the territory. We already spent 2 weeks just working on updating our sheltering plan with FEMA. So they are here in presence, if not virtual, but we are getting discussions done. The ability to respond is a challenge right now because the governor just put out, because of the positivity rates back in the state, if you're a state that's 10% or higher and you're traveling in, you have to have that clearance that you're not positive. So that's a concern. I just finished talking to American Red Cross about that. The Executive Director, John Duck, is saying, Director, how do we manage this? How do we anticipate coming down here 5 days ahead of time when it takes us 7 to 10 days to get a test done? But that test is good for 4 months. So if you're going to be part of a response group that comes down here, you have to have your COVID-19 test. You have to be able to respond back to it. So it's going to be slower to respond, but if we have these communication and coordination now, we're prepared for this, whether it's FEMA, the National Guard, American Red Cross, individual reserve representatives coming down to support us. These are dialogues we have to have because we cannot wish away COVID-19. I don't want to compromise rushing to failure. I don't want us to put ourselves even at more risk as individuals helping us or our own individuals. So the preventive measures we put in place today, whether you're a person in the territory or coming to assist, have to be understood and followed.
Right. Excellent. Now, in 2018, AARP, as an advocacy organization, which we are, advocated for a registry to be established here in the Virgin Islands. And that registry is for persons 60 years of age and older who are living alone, emphasizing living alone, 60 years of age or living alone, and also persons with disabilities who are living alone. And this registry is housed within Human Services, is established by Act number 8058. And this registry is established so that in the cases of natural disasters or any other kind of catastrophic event, that Human Services will be able to find these individuals, these vulnerable individuals over the age of 60 or with disabilities who are living alone. What is VITEMA's role in that, in the use of that registry, should there be a natural disaster or some other catastrophic event?
Yeah, that registry is very, very important, not just for Human Services, VITEMA as a coordinating agency, because I have 911. So 911, I have a group on St. Thomas, physically over by the airport there by VITEMA, and I have a group here on St. Croix also, very much focused on supporting the needs of the community. And that registry is where we maintain that registry once it's updated. So I emphasize, if you did fill it out back in 2018, make sure you update that. And we will be reaching out with Department of Human Services to make sure everybody is signed up for that as well and ready to go for hurricane season. Now, what's happened this year, and thanks to technology, similar to what we do for AARP-VI system, which you subscribe to that, we send messages out to your phones, by text or by email, both in English and Spanish, and ultimately you can get a phone call. So that has also been set up for the registry and work with VITEMA and Commissioner Kazi Gomez, Human Service. We have about 700 individuals already registered for that, which is great. Now, the way I understand, we've already done a couple of tests on this, and Commissioner Kazi Gomez is going to test it again. A message would go out to say, Troy and Daryl, you signed up for this. You know, are you okay? You know, hit 1 to say yes, 2 to say no. So at least you get an information that's coming back, that's passing through VITEMA, going to the Department of Human Services to validate, you know, whether you're okay or not. If you're not okay, you know, we will reach out to you to find out a little more detail of why you need help and assistance. So that registration for that is voluntary. Again, we want to make sure it's up to date with the telecommunications number. You put that mobile number down there, or you put your hard line in there. Make sure we have that for the registry to use technology this year. We look very forward to using that and engaging with that. And that communication just goes to that particular group. So when I send out from the VITEMA weather update and people are registered for that, that is not the same group that's going to get the messages that go out from the Department of Human Services.
Okay, excellent. And just really briefly, because we're almost out of time, but as COVID-19 continues to increase within the territory, what is VITEMA's role in the government's response to that?
Well, VITEMA, we've developed what's called a unified command. Department of Health, Commissioner Carcion, the governor has assigned a lead agency to be Department of Health. And so legally, the rule of law working through her is very, very important. VITEMA, as a coordinating agency, works with all the other support agencies, plus works with FEMA to track the federal requirements, the federal dollars cost share, which is now 75-25%. We're working individual assistance right now for crisis care with them. So we're very much a strong group right now with the 3 entities developing a unified command. So that's the way you work together. VITEMA is always involved in the mix, identifying what agencies support, involving the National Guard to make sure we use those resources timely, accurately to meet the needs for the territory.
Excellent. And so where can people go to learn more about VITEMA and all of the information that they may need to be prepared for the pandemic, for hurricanes, for earthquakes, etc.?
You can use a phone, you can use the internet. The phone numbers right now, I would say, for Island of St. Thomas, you're looking at 340-774-2244. For St. Croix, it's going to be 340-773-2244. Or St. John, my other EOC over there, is going to be 340-776-2244. And for those that are on internet, the VITEMA, which is VITEMA.vi.gov, you see all sorts of things. You mentioned all hazards. You talk about tsunamis, earthquakes, fires, pandemics, hurricanes. So preparation for that. You'll see our agencies identified there where we're located, my operations, my plans, my logistics, communications, information very much out there. The ready.gov, I have to mention that as a federal site for developing your plans. They will talk about all hazards also. So VITEMA.vi.gov or ready.gov are the 2 ones you want to go to find more information to develop a plan or for an assistance. And don't forget curfew passes. If you happen to be a business, VITEMA.vi.gov, we have information about curfew passes also for businesses.
Great. Well, we're out of time, but thank you so much, Daryl, Director Jaschen, for being with us today. And we look forward to hearing more from you in the future. And again, thank you for all that you and VITEMA do to keep us safe. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity.